heck thing. That was 25 cents. How come you didn't shoot?
Hey, are you a clueless hoplophobe who feels like you have to say something about guns? Yeah, I see lots of stuffs on the interwebs about guns, and I feels like I've got to say somethings. Well, you're in luck, because Mike Bloomberg has a guide out that can help you with what to say. Really? I mean, I've never owned a gun. I've never shot a gun. In fact, I know nothings about gun stuffs. You don't need to. Leave facts and logic to the gun goons. Hone in instead on your feelings, your anger, your passion. I have lots of feels. Use them to motivate yourself to spread half-baked non-truths about hot-button topics like the NRA and AR-15s. Hold on, isn't that kind of lying? Preposterous. Bloomberg hired public relations experts to develop a system of logic-inhibited exaggerations to bring you a messaging guide that is full of FACTS. Really? Yes, fallacious assertions containing total sewage. Well, all right then. Where can I buy one? Buy? Posh. Only capitalists worry about buying stuff of value. We prefer the progressive Sanders-Ocasio approach, which means dumping thousands of dollars into a cause and winding up with something priceless. And so we're offering it to you for exactly that. Nothing. Wow. I can't wait to tell those gun goons how passionately I feel about how little I know. Messaging guide is no guarantee of logical soundness nor factual accuracy. Attempts to use this guide in gun issue debates may result in a thorough rhetorical thrashing thanks to truth, fact, and logic often trouncing feels. Use at your own risk and embarrassment. Now, I've long known how lame the Violence Policy Center has been in its attempts to try to portray concealed carry licensees as some sort of public menace. But it seems that a few years ago, in a paper submitted to SSRN and has largely gone unnoticed, a history adjunct professor from the College of Western Idaho also noticed the VPC's rather dishonest approach to this narrative and detailed its love of stat inflation by pointing out how the VPC often counted people who were not really licensed, oftentimes confusing permits to purchase with licenses to carry. How the VPC leveraged pending cases to swell its rather unimpressive numbers. Now, I was already aware of how much the VPC loved to pass judgment on these cases. However, I was not aware of how they didn't follow up on some of these cases, several of which were ruled in favor of the licensee and went unmentioned by the VPC. How they like counting incidents more than once. And of course, their use of gun control's favorite stat inflation tactic, counting suicides, among other things. Now, I've done my own research into how the VPC mischaracterizes concealed carry practitioners already, but it's nice to see someone else taking the time to investigate the VPC's claims on their own and independently reaching similar conclusions. The FBI UCRs for 2017 have just come out, and at least one Bloomberg outfit is trying to put a nice, happy spin on what must be for them some pretty disappointing statistics. So, they report that the national murder rate has held steady after increases in 2015 and 2016. Really? Well, let's find out. We'll follow their own link, which goes to a tweet, which in itself goes to the FBI's own published online UCR data dealing with murder information. And we find out that indeed in 2015 and 2016 there were increases, but look at 2017. Went from 5.4 to 5.3. That shows that it's nudging down, not holding steady. So either the trace really didn't look at its own source material or it's lying to you. You decide. But then it reads that Mr. Asher's home state led the nation in murder rate again, and links to another tweet. And it does seem that Mr. Asher's home state of Louisiana does lead the nation in murder rate. And it looks like his hometown of New Orleans is within the top 5 most murderous cities in the country, at least in terms of rate. But then you look at this other column of numbers and you see something, well, odd. St. Louis does occupy the number 1 slot and has racked up more bodies than New Orleans, but it does not hold the highest body count. That dubious honor goes to Chicago, again. And this demonstrates another gun control tactic, giving you numbers without a frame of reference. In other words, not telling you the whole story. But going back to that list of states, here it is again with the raw numbers. Now, I know we're talking rates and so on and everything, but rates translate into numbers that represent individual lives. And it's pretty clear that Illinois has a much greater murder problem than any of the other states in the top 10. But here's another interesting point. Chicago is responsible for 80% of Illinois' murder problem, despite having 20% of the state's population. It's also interesting to note that for all the trace's focus on gun violence, it doesn't seem to want to talk about gun-related murder in this paragraph at all. Why? According to the FBI UCRs, there were about 653 murders in the city of Chicago alone. According to HeyJackass.com, 626 of those happened with guns, although they give slightly bigger numbers for the total number of murders in Chicago. But taking this into account, we find that about 92% of all murders in Chicago happened with guns. This is why gun control propagandists do this dance whenever Chicago is brought up. It's a progressive city, long run by Democrats, and it's situated in a state that receives good marks from other gun control organizations on account of its gun control laws. And yet, Chicago kills more people than any other city in the country. And it disproves the prohibitionist article of faith that more gun laws will guarantee safer streets. It's an embarrassment to the gun control movement. Meanwhile, further west, the FBI UCRs seem to challenge the necessity of Washington State's Initiative 1639, which is an attempt to prohibit ownership of evil black rifles. Except that in all of 2017, there was only one murder where a rifle was involved, and chances are it wasn't an AR-15. So gun control guys, good luck to you in your future efforts to try to spin the crime stats and translate them into policy. You're doing a bang-up job of it so far. And this wraps up season 3 and is coming close to the end of Here's What's Missing's first full year. Now, I never would have thought at the beginning of this that I would have been able to make over 40 videos on gun issue related topics. But we've covered everything from the Constitution to concealed carry to international statistics to the history of free armed citizens and even dabbling a little bit of poetry. When this page started out, I had maybe 25 followers, and now I'm over 10 times that amount. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for your interest in this page and its posts, its videos, but most importantly, its subject. And this article is the reason why. No sea change on gun laws. This line in particular made me smile. This year was not the national game changer that gun control advocates had hoped it would be. You see, for all the emotionalism they tried to whip up over some pretty big tragedies, and for all the marches and the tours that they held this summer, it largely went nowhere. And why? Thankfully, most Americans are still smart enough to value their rights over feelings and are resistant enough against attempts to try to get them to cede more power to the state through emotional manipulation. But still, there are plenty of useful idiots around ready to sell your rights at the drop of a hashtag. And this requires vigilance, as Reagan warned, in order to make sure that liberty does not become extinct in our generation. And with that, I'll see you guys in November.